So I'd like to share a poem, epic saga really, called Beowulf with you today. It's the longest and greatest surviving poem from the early Anglo-Saxon era of northwestern Europe. The setting of the epic is the 6th century in what is now known as southern Scandinavia, but the interesting thing is that the only known copy of the poem was written here in England over 1,000 years ago by an Anglo-Saxon scribe, probably in the ancient Wessex town of Malmesbury. Beowulf is an important part of English culture and literary heritage to this day, and I'm sharing this tale with you while sat in the ancient forest of Yten in southern England. Now, Yten literally means place of the Jutes, and the Jutes were a tribe from what is now Denmark, and this is the place that they first settled over a millennia ago, bringing with them tales such as Beowulf that then subsequently got absorbed into our culture and became part of the DNA of modern-day Britain. Hrothgar was a king in ancient Denmark, whose successful rule was symbolised by a magnificent central feasting hall called Heorot. But for 12 years, a huge man-like ogre named Grendel menaced the ageing Hrothgar, raiding Heorot and killing the king's thanes, his warriors. Grendel ruled the mead hall by night, and people lived in fear of his attacks. Beowulf, a young warrior, comes to Hrothgar's aid, bringing with him 14 of his finest men. Hrothgar once sheltered Beowulf's father during a deadly feud, and Beowulf hopes to return the favour whilst enhancing his own reputation and gaining treasure for his own king, Hygelac. At a feast before nightfall, on the first day of the visit, an obnoxious drunken warrior named Unferth insults Beowulf, claiming that the visitor once embarrassingly lost a swimming contest to a boyhood acquaintance named Breca and is therefore no match for the monster Grendel. Beowulf responds with dignity while putting Unferth in his place. In fact, the two swimmers were separated by a storm on the 5th night of the contest, and Beowulf had slain 9 sea monsters before finally returning to shore. After the feast is over, Beowulf's visiting warriors retire to safer sleeping quarters, but Beowulf himself beds down in Heorot alongside his hosts, fully aware that Grendel may visit them. And he does. Angered by the joy of the men in the mead hall, the ogre furiously bursts in, killing one, then he reaches for Beowulf. With the strength of 30 men, Beowulf seizes the ogre's claw and does not let go. Beowulf is determined not to let Grendel live. His men keep trying to help him, striking out at the foul fiend with their swords. They do not know that even the sharpest blade cannot pierce Grendel's skin. The monster was protected by demonic spells that repelled any weapon. Yet he was nearing the end of his life, and Grendel's strength was failing him. Beowulf didn't release his powerful grasp, and they were locked in the grip of hatred. Grendel's whole body shook with pain as his shoulder began to come apart. His bones and muscles broke and tore, and Beowulf wrenched off his arm. It was a fatal wound, and Beowulf drove the monster out of the hall and back into the swamps. Grendel went to his foul den to die. The wishes of the warriors had come true. Beowulf had cleansed their hall of evil and saved them from death. He'd made good on his promise and earned glory for his bravery. And as a display of Beowulf's victory, Grendel's arm itself was mounted on the wall of the great hall as a trophy. As daylight broke, men from all over the country came to the hall. They were happy to see the tracks Grendel had left behind as he fled to his den. The swamp was filled with his blood. As he neared death, he dove into the water and drowned himself, sending his soul to hell. Throughout the land, people repeated the story of Beowulf's strength and bravery. Although people stayed loyal to their good king Hrothgar, it was said that no man deserved to rule more than the glorious Beowulf. Beowulf's men celebrated with a huge feast featuring entertainment by Hrothgar's minstrel, who accompanied himself on a harp and sang traditional songs. He also came up with a new one, praising Beowulf's triumph, and even Hrothgar's queen, Queen Worldview, proves to be a perfect hostess, offering Beowulf a gold collar and her gratitude. Filled with mead, wine, and great food, The entire party then retires for what they expect to be their first peaceful night's sleep in years. They went to sleep, though one of them would not wake. Someone was seeking revenge for Grendel's death. Deep within the swamp, Grendel's mother had been mourning her son and waiting for vengeance, and now, driven by sorrow and rage, she was coming for them. She came to Heorot where the warriors were sleeping. She burst in with a woman's terrifying strength, only slightly less than Grendel's. Men leapt to their feet and grabbed their swords and shields. As soon as she realised she'd been discovered, she tried to escape. And she grabs one of the men, a warrior called Askir, one of Hrothgar's closest friends, and rushes back to her swamp. Beowulf wasn't in the hall. He'd been given a bed elsewhere. Heorot was in chaos. Grendel's mother had taken back her son's severed arm, in addition to the unlucky Askir. Hrothgar was devastated by the news. Beowulf was summoned to the king's side, and Hrothgar had been wondering aloud whether fate would ever stop this string of misfortunes. Beowulf, Hrothgar, and a retinue of warriors followed the mother's tracks into a dark, forbidding swamp and to the edge of her mere. The slaughtered Askir's head sits on a cliff by the lake, which hides the ogre's underground cave. Carrying a sword called Hrunting, Beowulf dives into the mere to seek the mother. Near the bottom of the lake, Grendel's mother attacks and hauls the brave warrior to her dimly lit cave. Beowulf fights back once inside the dry cavern, but the gift sword, Hrunting, strong as it is, fails to penetrate the ogre's hide. The mother moves to kill Beowulf with her knife, but his armour, made by the legendary blacksmith Wayland, protects him. Armour and swords from previous victims were scattered around the den. Beowulf sees the sword of Eärendil's, said to be the greatest blade ever forged, a weapon made for and by giants. Ordinary men couldn't even lift it, but Beowulf snatched it up and swung wildly, catching Grendel's mother across the neck. It cut through her skin and shattered her bones. She collapsed onto the floor, doomed. Beowulf was happy with his bloody work. Suddenly, the hall filled with light. Beowulf looked around and saw that Grendel's body was resting there, so he decides to take revenge for all the men Grendel had killed. He strode up to the body and, using his new sword, severed the monster's head. Meanwhile, the men on the shore saw that the waters were running with blood. Some said that Beowulf must be dead. It had been 9 hours after all, and they were growing sure that Grendel's mother must have won the battle. Some of them, including Hrothgar, began to make their way home. Beowulf's warriors, however, waited for their leader to return from the bloody deep. Down below, the blood of the monsters caused the great sword to melt like ice that's been heated. Though the monster's den was full of treasure, Beowulf decided to take only Grendel's head and the jewel-covered hilt of the now melted sword. He swam for the surface. The water was growing lighter as the evil influence of Grendel's mother wore off. Beowulf surfaced and made his way to the shore. His men were overjoyed to see him and thanked the gods for saving their brave leader. They helped Beowulf pull off his armour, and they started back on the footpaths they had taken from Heorot. Grendel's head was so heavy that it took 4 of them to carry it. They all marched together with Beowulf in the middle. They strode into the hall, dragging Grendel's monstrous head by the hair. The people inside, including the queen, were eating and drinking, and they looked up in astonishment. "Hrothgar," Beowulf called out, "we've brought you this treasure from the mere. I nearly lost my life getting it. I fought hard and would have lost my strength if the gods hadn't protected me. Hrunting is a good sword, but it completely failed me. Thankfully, the gods showed me another sword hanging on the wall, an old sword of the giants, and I used it to kill the beast that lived in that foul den. Their blood melted the blade, but I brought the hilt back to show you. I've avenged the deaths of our people. Everyone in Heorot can sleep safely now." Beowulf handed the golden hilt to Hrothgar. That gift became the most treasured possession of the Danish princes, a sign of the evils that once plagued them. Hrothgar examined the hilt, looking carefully at the ancient etchings on it. They told the story of how war was born and the giants were cut off from the gods who flooded the world. Everyone was quiet as Hrothgar studied the hilt. He looked up and spoke. Beowulf, you were born for glory. Your name is known everywhere. You combine great strength with wisdom. I repeat my promise of friendship, and I know that you will be a great gift to your people for years to come. After more celebration and gifts, Beowulf and his men returned home. There, he serves his king well until Hygelac is killed in battle and his son dies in a feud. Beowulf is then named king and ruled successfully for 50 long years. Like Hrothgar, however, his peace is shattered in his declining years. Beowulf must battle one more demon. A fiery dragon has become enraged because someone has inadvertently discovered his treasure trove and stolen a valuable cup. The dragon terrorizes the countryside at night, burning several homes, including Beowulf's. Beowulf and 11 of his men seek out the dragon's barrow. Beowulf insists on taking on the dragon alone, but his own sword, Naegling, is no match for the monster. Seeing his king in trouble, one of his warriors, Wiglaf, goes to Beowulf's assistance. The others flee to the woods. But together, Wiglaf and Beowulf, well, they kill the dragon, but the mighty king is mortally wounded in the fight. Dying, Beowulf leaves his kingdom to Wiglaf and requests that his body be cremated in a funeral pyre and buried high on a seaside cliff where passing sailors might see the barrow. The dragon's treasure hoard is buried with him. And it is said that they lie there still, waiting to be discovered. But like a lot of legends and folklores that come down to us through the mists of time, Beowulf is a little bit gory and violent, but then so was a lot of our history. And what I love this poem for is actually the rare window it offers into the so-called Dark Ages before the Norman conquest of 1066. So, to Beowulf.